All right, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started with our class this afternoon. And where did you all go? There it is. All right, so today in class, we're going to be talking about handling requests. So when I talked to you all yesterday, we talked about how the web works and we talked about how Rails works with MVC. And we spent a good amount of time talking about HTTP requests. So today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how does a Rails app handle those requests. We're going to start with some review from yesterday. And I want to first start by talking a little bit about metacognition, or maybe a better way of saying that is how you learn. And so with this content that we're talking about early in the mod with HTTP and verbs and paths and all that, it's kind of hard to put that into practice. Like it's kind of hard to practice that through code because we don't necessarily, like a lot of this stuff is kind of like a background knowledge that goes into writing the code. So it's almost like background knowledge before you can start writing the code. So with things like this, where we aren't necessarily testing our understanding through code, we're going to test our understanding with a recall activity. So what we're going to do here is we're going to see if you can, what you remember on your own, and really try to do it without reference. So test your own understanding, do your own little check for understanding of how far can you get without reference. Then after you get that far, use your references and fill in what you didn't know. I think this can be a really good strategy for you all to use on your own time. You might find that you have to do 3 or 4 rounds of this before you really internalize something. You can read through something and think, oh, like I think I understood that. But then when you go to write it down, or another thing you could do is like try to explain it to somebody, you might find that it's not very easy. So then you might go back to your reference, read a little bit further your understanding, and try again, explain the concept or write down the answers or whatever it is. So I think just in general, practicing this recall on your own and using it to test your own understanding is a very key learning skill that I want you all to have. Let's go ahead and get into it. So with the actual questions I want you to answer are, what is a verb? What is a path? What are the 5 common HTTP verbs? And what are some examples of a path? I'm going to give you all 4 minutes to do this on your own. So take until 1:08 to work through these, and then I'm going to put you into some rooms to discuss. Take about 1 more minute on your own. All right, so I just dropped the questions in the chat just so you have access to them um, when I send you out into your rooms. Yeah, so I'm gonna put you into some pairs and go ahead and discuss these questions with your partner. And I'm gonna give you all, 5 minutes to do this. right, welcome back, everybody. Let's go ahead and talk through this together. So I'm going to do some random volunteers for this. Pop. There we go. Aiden, what did you and your group talk about for what is a verb?
Hi. A verb is the actionable part of a request. It's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So I want to break that out. So it's part of, and I would say it's a what type of request are we talking about?
Let's see. I'm not sure.
Does anybody know what I'm getting at here? When we're talking about requests, let's just be very explicit. What type of request are we talking about? Alexander?
HTTP.
There we go. Part of an HTTP request. Yep. Yeah. And as Jameson mentioned earlier, vocab is just really important. There's just so much of it. So for the beginning of the mod, we are going to try to talk about this and be as explicit as possible. So you said it's part of an HTTP request. And then what was the other part?
It is the actionable part of the HTTP request.
Actionable part. Mm-hmm. Great. Let's hear from, I'm going to go to Joey Haas. Did you and your partners talk about anything else for what a verb is?
Aiden and I were partners, so.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about the path next. Let's go to Claudia. What did you and your pair talk about?
Yeah, we talked about the path being like where that action is going to happen, where the verb is going to happen.
Yeah, where the action is going to happen. Can I, just so that we can get some as many examples as possible, can I get a volunteer? What's another way we could rephrase this? Where the action is going to happen? How else could we say that? Joey?
Well, we kind of were saying like it's the file or like the table that'll be interacted with. So it's the verb says the action, and then the path is the table that you're taking the action on, or more specific if it's like a row or record.
Sure. So when we say where, if I put this in quotes here, you're kind of expanding on what this where might mean. So like by where, we could mean a table, it could be a file. What else did you say, Joey? What else could this be?
That was kind of where we left it, but I mean, I think maybe where you're going is like it's like a URI, kind of like it's part of like maybe an address, or it's like the I keep going back to the where part, but like essentially within like a directory or route, it's the way you get to it and that stuff.
Yeah, so you're very, and I can tell by us using this language of where, we're thinking about it as kind of like a location. So if our app is kind of like a big, maybe our app is like, our app is one big entity, the path inside of it is where are we going specifically in our application. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Can I hear from, let's go to Dougie. What did you all talk about for the 5 common HTTP verbs? Do you think you could give me one of them?
You only want one?
Yeah, let's just do one at a time.
Put.
Let's go to Austin. Can you give me another one?
Yeah, post.
Perfect. How about Joe Ray? What's another one?
Patch.
Perfect. We've got 2 more. Ksenia.
Sorry, my mic was off. Update.
So not quite. Update is not going to be one of the verbs. That's going to be one of the things that update, or one of the things that the verbs will do, but it's not one of our verbs. Do you have?
Delete.
Delete. And then we've got one more. Joe.
Get.
Get. There we go. So there's our 5 common HTTP verbs. Let's talk about some examples of a path. Can we hear from Jahara?
So an example of the path would be like up at the top of your screen where you have Chrome and then the title. Everything that's coming after the .com is going to be the path.
Perfect. So yeah, I'll just grab this and throw it right there. Yeah. Let's give me another example. Andrew Schaefer.
An example of a path?
Mhm.
I mean, I just always kind of thought of it as anything that's in the little URL bar counts as a path.
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, it's there are a lot of options here.
So I suppose a legitimate path would be \1 \2 \3. I mean,
Sure.
some program might do that.
Yeah, that's a really good example. When we're talking about this path, we're really just saying anything after this .com, and I'll refer to this as a top level domain. More on that in a minute, but anything after that is our path. So just slash and then something. Let's take this a step further. If we're talking about Task Manager, what are some of the paths that we have in Task Manager? Can I get a volunteer for this one? Olivia.
You have a task or \task and \task\new.
Perfect. These are all great examples of paths. So if we put all this together, we could say that the path indicates where the action is going to happen. So it's going to happen in these tasks or in this task/new, whatever this is. And the verb is the actionable part. So some other ways that I might phrase this when we talk about a path, I could say what the target of the action is. Excuse me. So a verb is the actionable part. Another way that I could say this is the action we want to perform. Another way of saying that. So verb is what we're trying to do. Path is what we're trying to do it to, our target. And so we put those two together, and then we know what our request is trying to do. You all did an awesome job with that. Let's move on to a couple more slides here before we move in. So I think what I will probably do is I will go a little bit longer without a POM, and the second half of this class will mostly be work time. So we just did all this. There we go. Any questions about this before I move on? I think these are some great notes. Jennifer.
Do you have an example of a situation where you would use update all versus, or excuse, put instead of patch? Like our group was discussing just not understanding a situation where it would be beneficial to do that as opposed to just creating a new one, aside from like an asteroid destroying a car and needing to replace everything.
Gotcha. Yes, I can give you an example of that. That's gonna be on my next slide, so I'm gonna wait for that.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Yeah, sorry if this is a little like remedial, but and maybe it's not helpful to like talk about it in analogies at this point, but is a path more akin to a map or like the actual territory? Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So if we think about this as a physical space, the path would be more of the territory. So it's like if we think of as an analogy, if our Rails app is the United States, the path might be a single state within it. So we're trying to get to like North Dakota or trying to get to South Dakota. The verb part of it is what are we trying to do once we get there? So maybe as an analogy, this could be, okay, yeah, we want to get to North Dakota or South Dakota, but then we want to see Mount Rushmore when we get there. We want to go to California, but we want to also see the ocean when we get there. Or that's an example of seeing something. Maybe we would want to do something, like maybe we want to plant a garden, or we want to plant a tree, or we want to delete something. We want to remove something. We want to remove a tree. We want to chop down a tree. Does that help, Andrew?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see what I wrote over here. So for an HTTP request, this is kind of, and this is why I wanted to start off with part of the HTTP request. Maybe just to be super clear, we could also say that the path is also part of the HTTP request. So verb and path are two parts of this HTTP request. So for an HTTP request, we're going to have both a URI, we're going to have a URI or path. So this is another point of terminology. URI and path are two vocab words that are used interchangeably. So in that last slide, when we were saying slash whatever, whatever, that is both the path and the URI. Same word, just think of them as synonyms. So the URI or path indicates what we're trying to access. So for instance, slash tasks or slash task slash 5. The verb indicates what we're trying to do. So you all did a great job walking me through this. Now what we're doing here is we're mapping these verbs to actions. So a get means we're trying to retrieve something. Post is we're trying to create something. Patch and put, we're trying to update something. And delete, we're trying to destroy something. So to Jennifer's point, both patch and put do an update. And patch is updating part of a resource, and put is updating the entire resource. So as an example, if I am using Amazon, for example, and I make a new order on Amazon, let's say that I want to remove an item from my order. So maybe I order 10 different items and I say, oh, actually I didn't need the 10th one. And so I remove it. You could consider that a patch because we're updating part of the order. Now, if I contrast that with if I made an order on Amazon and the order was completely incorrect and I needed to redo that order, maybe I call customer support and they're like, oh yeah, that order for whatever reason can't be complete. We're going to create a new order in the system for you. Maybe rather than actually creating a new order, they just update my entire old order. That would be a better example of a put. So put is update the entire thing. Patch is just update a part of the thing. Does that clear that up at all, Jen?
Yes. I think. Thank you.
Another example might be if I have, if we think about our task manager, a task has a description and a title. So a patch would be more like I'm updating one of those attributes, like I'm updating the title or I'm updating the description. If I'm updating both of them, so I'm updating the entire resource, a put might be more appropriate. Now that is definitely not mastery level content. For our purposes in mod 2, we're going to be using patch almost exclusively, and we're not really going to use put. It is good to know about the difference in case you see the two in practice, but most often we're going to use patch. All right, so kind of putting this all together in the request response cycle, clients send requests, or clients sending requests and servers sending responses. This is all part of the HTTP request response cycle. So this was a point of clarification yesterday, that when we imagined that analogy of like a letter going through the postal system and our pen pal writing a response, or in the more explicit diagram, sending a request to a server and getting a response back from a server, that is all one HTTP request response cycle, and it's all part of the same process. You can't have one part without the other. So if we have a request without a response, it's not a full request response cycle. So in mod 2, we're going to be writing server-side code. And it's important for us to have an understanding of HTTP because essentially our app has one job. It receives an HTTP request and it has to send back a response. Now that's a very big oversimplification, but it is true. So when our app gets a request, it has to send back a response. Now, what it does in between that, there are a lot of nuances that can go into that, but it has to, at the bare minimum, send back a response for every request. So we need to know about HTTP because we need to know how to interpret requests and we need to know how to send responses. So a lot of this is abstracted away from us when we use Rails. So this is why we're making this a big focus in week 1 of the mod. We're really trying to ground what we're doing in some background material of what's happening on the web and what's happening in terms of HTTP. A saying that you might hear often in development is you should understand one layer of abstraction below where you're working. So if Rails is kind of the abstract, or Rails is the layer where we're working, HTTP and the internet in general is the layer right beneath that. So we want to understand a little bit about that layer that our Rails app runs on top of. So in other words, our Rails app runs on top of the internet and HTTP. So we want to make sure we have some understanding of those. So that's just a little bit of the background of why we're talking about this so much, in case you're wondering, how does this connect to what we're doing in terms of Rails? We're going to get into parts of a URL next. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right. I think this is a good spot for a POM. Let's come back at 137. All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started again. So I do just want to say before we move on, I know we're spending a lot of time talking about the HTTP request response cycle, but it really is important background knowledge for us to have. So kind of the way that we look at it as is as a spiral of understanding. So the first spiral was do task manager without any of this HTTP stuff. And then second spiral is let's learn more about HTTP, and we're going to do another app, which is setlist in class. We're going to keep working through that, and we're going to layer on this new understanding of HTTP. So we're going to continue to spiral in some of these background knowledge concepts throughout the mod. Let's get into parts of the URL. So for this URL right here, we can break this down. So we started doing this earlier when Jahara said, look at that URL in your address bar and take everything after the slash. What we're doing there was we're breaking down the URL into its component parts. So let's do that a little bit further. So for this URL, we're going to have a protocol. So more vocab coming at you. This is a protocol, and that is the HTTP://. For the protocol, there's only ever two options for the protocol, HTTP or HTTPS. Now that's not strictly true, but for our purposes of developing web applications, it's always going to be some type of HTTP. The next part is the domain. So this is taskmanager.herokuapp.com. And I mentioned this earlier, but you can further break this domain down into the top level domain. So the top level domain is the .com in this case. Next up, we're going to have the URI or path. So again, these are synonyms. Think of them as the same. So for this URL, we've got some characters in here that we might not have seen before. For this URL, /task/new is going to be the URI or the path. And URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. Then we're going to have the query string, which is this question mark, title equals new, and task equals task. And then the final part is going to be the anchor. So what I want you to do next is answer this question. How do you know where each part begins and ends? What's the syntax for reading this URL? I want you to take a minute to think about it, and I'm going to put you in a breakout room and discuss with your partner. All right, I just dropped a screenshot of this slide into your cohort Slack channel in case you need to reference it. I'm going to give you all 2 minutes to talk through this. How do you know where each part of this URL begins and ends? 2 minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to take some more volunteers here, some forced volunteers. So George, can you tell me how, if I'm looking at a URL, how can I tell where that protocol begins and ends?
So we said that the protocol is generally going to be in the beginning, and it'll either be the HTTP or HTTPS, and then it'll be followed by the colon and double slashes.
Mhm. Yeah. So what's the ending there? How do you know when it's over?
Oh, it'll be the double slashes.
Yeah, exactly. So the protocol is always going to be the first part here, and it will end in the double slashes. What about the domain, Andrew Smith?
Sure. Yeah. I guess the indicator for me would be the .com or .org or .gov or whatever it is. There's like 3-letter endings following a period, and that's the ones that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, and those are referred to as, do you see where it is on the screen? What are those like 3-letter endings called?
Oh, sorry, the top level domain.
Yeah, you got it. And they're not always 3 letters. Can anybody give me an example of one that's not 3 letters? Let's go ahead and shout it out.
Oh, country.
Countries.
Oh, yeah.
Country codes IO. Yep. IO is a country code. It actually stands for Icelandic organizations. But yeah, like backend.turing.io. So Turing's top level domain is .io. Yeah. So Andrew, I would say that the top level domain tells us where it ends. How do you know where it starts?
Well, it's run up against the protocol. So we know the protocol, and then I guess my answer is a little tautological, but just you know, how I would figure it out is just like, you know, it ends at the protocol, or begins at the protocol and it ends at the top level domain.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So in order to understand that, we need to be able to look at the protocol and say, okay, this part is the protocol. So then the domain immediately follows the protocol. Exactly. What about the URI or path? Khan, how do we identify that?
Sure, it comes right after the end of the top level domain, and it ends with right before the question mark appears.
Right. Yeah, and then there's one. What is gonna? So it does appear right after the domain. What is the starting character of our
Forward
path?
slash.
Yeah.
Is that what you call it, by the way? Forward slash.
I would call that a forward slash, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I would actually just say slash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're always going to have domain followed by a slash. And then how many of these, this is kind of a bonus question, Khan, or you can bump to a classmate. How many of these slashes would we expect to see?
As many as needed.
Yep, exactly. So you're going to have however many slashes you need in your path. So the path can be very similar to the domain, how it could be something dot something dot something dot something. You can just keep going on until it ends in one of those top level domains. Same thing for the path. What about the query string? And Khan, you were correct. It ends at the question mark. Logan, where does our question mark, or sorry, our query string begin and end?
Right after the path ends, so at the question mark.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then how do we know where it ends?
It ends right before the pound sign.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct. It could be the case that we don't have either of these last two parts, so the query string and the anchor. So if you don't have the anchor, for example, the query string just ends wherever the URL ends. And then finally, the anchor, Galen.
So that anchor is going to be everything after the pound sign.
Yep, you've got it.
And I'll assume that nothing comes after the anchor. Is that correct? Is that always going to be at the last thing?
Yeah, you've got it. If there is an anchor, it would be the last thing, but there's not always an anchor. Great job, everybody. So this is another thing that I would recommend that you spend at least some time on your own, really practicing this and internalizing these vocab words. These are important to know. I would say anchor is probably the least important one, but all the other ones, you should know those. George.
So I've actually seen before that in like the domain, that like first part of it, the task manager could be subbed out with like other things. I remember like in my old job, they were like, George, fix this AWS thing, but I had no idea what I was doing. So when I was like looking into it, it was like, the way that worked is they put like a star there, and then it would take it, like you could feed like any link and it would redirect you to like a different part of the site. As like an admin feature. And so I was wondering what that is called. Like, is that still like part of the domain, and are you like changing the domain, or is the domain only like that like Heroku app part of it?
So just to be clear, you're saying that there, for another company you worked for, there's a feature where you could include a star somewhere in here and it would take you anywhere?
The way the link lurked in like Route 53 is like, it was like star.herokuapp.com. It wasn't Heroku app, it was star.stagedash.com. And that was like the internal way they managed like pre-prod and like different branches. And you would just type in the branch name, like before, to be like branch name whatever .stagedash.com, and it would bring you to like a copy of the site with your branch changes. But I was wondering, like, is that still the domain, or is that like another feature of like HTTPS?
It sounds like that's a feature of AWS, is my guess.
Okay.
So just in general, the star, if I go over to like my terminal over here, star, we could refer to that as the wildcard character. And that means that it will just, it's kind of like a joker in a deck of cards, like it can match anything, or a wild card in like the Uno card game. Wild cards will just match anything. So I could show you that with, if I do, what's a command here? If I do ls here, I can see all of my files here. And if I do something like ls app/star, that means list everything in the app directory. So that's why I get all of this. So star in general just means wildcard. So I'm guessing that that was a feature of AWS where you were essentially saying, accept any domain name here.
Gotcha.
That's what I would imagine.
So
Yeah,
like,
but without knowing the specifics, I can't give you too much more information.
So then in that case, kind of like, you know, like it's like docs.google.com, but like you would have like www.google.com. Are those different domains then? Like Google just so happens to own like docs.google.com, but also like other things. But I think if you go to like sheets.google.com, maybe it's different. I don't know. Or like mail.google.com. Because I know mail brings you to Gmail, but I know like they're all different. So I'm kind of confused on like how they're all the same domain, but they're also like Google.
I would say they're not the same domain. So
Okay.
look at all of those like docs.google.com and mail.google.com. Look at all of those as separate domains.
Okay.
Yeah, they're related because they're all like some flavor of google.com, but they are still all separate domains. So for example, backend.turing.io and frontend.turing.io, those are two different domains. Even though they're both .turing.io, you can think of them as like completely separate.
Okay. That kind of makes sense. It's still confusing, but I don't know. So when does that mean like if you buy a website, you have to buy like every single thing that's like all those different variations?
I don't know exactly how that works, but I think the short answer is yes. I think so like Turing, for example, we have to purchase backend.turing.io and frontend.turing.io, but that might not be true. I'm not entirely sure how that works. Maybe we just have turing.io and we can have different domains with subdomains within that domain. I'm not exactly sure, George. And to be honest, for now, I don't want to like overload people with too much information.
Okay.
For now, what I want to make sure that we're clear on is these vocab words and what they mean.
Gotcha.
Let's
All
go
right,
to,
thank you.
you're welcome. Let's go to Alexander.
Just curious about like www. Is that kind of like fizzled out just because it's like every website's going to be start with that, or?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure. I can't entirely answer that for you. Yeah, I don't really know, because like if I click on this, I don't see like www as part of this. So I'm not sure. I think it might just be outdated at this point.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have more context on that.
No worries. Thanks.
My final slide here was just to isolate the URI here. So the URI is going to be the most important part of a URL. So knowing how to look at a URL and zoom in on this is the URI, that is an important skill to have. So in this case, /task/note. All right, y'all. I am going to send you off in and do some solo work time. So let's go to this lesson plan. And what I want you to do is I want you to work through this lesson. So I'll start off with let's do 20 minutes. So we'll start off with 20 minutes, and you'll notice that the first part of this lesson is essentially just what I covered with you all. So talking about the verb and path, the different verbs that we can do and what actions they map to, and then a little bit on the URL and how to break up the URL. So that's where this reference material is if you need it. You can, if you would like, go ahead and just start on this section that says set list. So I mentioned this earlier, but we are going to be building this app throughout Mod 2. Setlist is going to be like our main workspace where we're going to build new things and learn how to develop a Rails application. So to that end, we're going to develop a Rails app in class. So go ahead and start here, and I'll give you all 20 minutes to work. If you don't quite get all the way through, that's fine. There's a lot of information in here, so I would imagine that you're going to need to finish this on your own time. But we'll just start off with 20 minutes and see how far you all get. And yeah, we'll leave it there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you all out into your own breakout rooms for solo work time. And if you need help, you can use the ask for help button, or you can return to the main session. But yeah, I'm going to break you all out so that you all have some private work time. So I'll make. Does anyone have any questions before I let you go? And feel free to take a palm if you need it. I'll put the timer on for 20 minutes. All right, good luck. Let me know if you need any help. Hey, John.
Hey, I got quick question. I got an error message I haven't seen before, which is just that an error occurred while installing Puma. And it looks like it still worked, like everything is there. It just, at the end, it's make sure that gem install Puma succeeds before bundling.
Could you show me what you're getting?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar to me either.
Although I have noticed my computer gets a little funky with like Big Sur updates, and that might have been what happened.
Yeah.
But
What command did you use to produce
Big
that?
Sur. This was the create essentially everything. So it looks like I got a lot of errors actually, never mind. Puma just where it ended. But it looks like, I mean, if I look in the, I mean, this was the, all the way at the top.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit and find where we start getting some error output. Oh, right there. Okay.
So my guess is I did a Big Sur update, I think Monday, so which was yesterday. I'm guessing what it seems to have done every single time I've done a Big Sur update is it drops like the dev tools. I'm guessing it might have done that again.
Interesting. So you've updated a Big Sur, and this is just you've done another update on Big Sur, right?
Correct. But every time it didn't occur to me, but every single time I've done like any incremental update to Big Sur, it drops I have to redo like the mod 0 computer setup.
Okay, let's try that. Let's do xcode -select. Just in case you haven't memorized this. No space after select. And then after that, space -- install.
Do you say space or
-- install?
Okay. And space between the --
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me plug it in.
Yeah, it looks like you're okay on battery. Yeah, I guess if it's down, if this is installing some tools, then that was the problem. Because I think otherwise, I just want to try it on my end. I think it should just say you're good to go if you don't need to do that. Yeah, mine just says command line tools are already installed.
It drops it every single time I do any update to Apple, and I did it over intermission. I had an update and I had to do it again. I don't know why it really does not like Big Sur.
Yeah, that's dumb. I don't know if that's like some sort of licensing issue, like just every time there's an update, you have to like re-agree to the license, and I don't know.
It definitely didn't do it on Catalina.
Yeah, you're right.
So oh well.
There's just a lot of nuances in working with the Mac.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to see this work. It's taking a while.
And it's when I do a pretty good internet speed, but I guess it's done download, it's just installing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it did, like, it dropped most of in there. It just, I'm assuming, I didn't look into the gem file, but I'm guessing the gem file might be somewhat empty.
So CD is only going to be for a directory. So gem file is the file.
Is a literal file. Yeah, makes sense.
One thing that you can do if you don't, if you want to just like view a file in the terminal, you can use cat. So you could do cat gem file. And that will just show you that code in your terminal, or that text in your terminal.
Good. Oh, I mean, it looks populated.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah.
Even and it has Puma in there too, which is odd.
Yeah, so I think the order of operations is it's going to create the gem file, and then it's going to install all the gems from the gem file. So the gem file is essentially a manifest of all the gems you need to install.
Got it. That makes sense. Well, I'm assuming this will work. 30-ish. It stopped at 37. So can I, well, I guess I can try it anyway. Can I just rerun?
Try it.
Or will it overwrite? Just bundle?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, did this get farther than it did last time? I don't see Puma.
I think it's still going though. There it goes.
All right. Can you try
All right.
Rails DB create from here just to see if that works? So it's going to be Rails and then space DB : create. All right, I think you're good to go.
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have another quick question.
Okay, cool. What's up?
So I'm trying to jump into the prize session and unsuccessfully.
So in that output, Ksenia, do you think you could highlight what's the error that you're getting here?
In the output, what the error am I getting?
Yeah, so
the
in your
output.
yeah.
No route matches get set list.
Yep.
So I'm not getting set list.
So this is saying no route matches to get to /set list. So the way that we could debug this is we could look in our routes file. And so inside this routes file, we don't have a get to /set list. What we have is get to /song.
So it'd be like that?
Not quite. I think what you actually need to change is your path that you're visiting in your URL bar up here.
Oh, what if I just don't do anything? But wait a minute. But don't I have, I'm supposed to, okay. Server, so I'm on the server. I'm updating it, but I'm still not hitting pry. See? I can like talk later about it. I feel like everyone is coming back.
So what you need to do is in your address bar, put in /songs after the 3000.
I thought it's like automatically gonna bring, okay, gotcha. Okay.
There you go.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So everybody should be coming back in about 30 seconds. Before that, does anybody have any questions or any issues that they ran into that maybe we could look at together? Kevin, what did you run into?
I got as far as the entering the pry in the in my terminal didn't catch the pry for some reason. It got the, let me see, I'm trying to find it. Oh, in the songs controller class, after we put in the pry in index, my terminal didn't show the pry. It said undefined method pry and asked if I meant try, and that's all it asked me.
Interesting. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and take a look at Kevin's what Kevin's running into. Kevin, can you share your screen?
Sure thing. So where was that? So I entered the pry into the index section, and then I refreshed, and it said no method error, undefined method pry.
Great. So because we got this error, we know that we got this far to this line of code, but then it just didn't work. That binding.pry didn't work. So I think someone mentioned it in the chat, but the way that we would check if pry is loaded in mod 1, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're requiring pry, right? When we're working in Rails, we don't require files. All of our file or everything that we need required, we specify in the gem file. So let's open up, can we do it on the left pane? Can we open up the gem file?
And
this one in
yeah.
Atom.
Gem file.
Let's practice the Command T shortcut. So do Command T here, and then type in gem file, and then hit enter. There you go. Cool. So then what we could do is do a Command F in here to search for pry.
No.
And we don't find it. So let's go down to our development test block. And we haven't talked too much about this, these different environments like development and test, but we'll do that more throughout the mod. For now, let's stick in there gem pry.
On line 40 here?
Yep. And we'll put pry in quotes.
Okay,
Now let's bundle. So anytime you change your gem file, you need to, anytime you change your gem file, you need to run bundle again. So that will tell your Rails app to install any new gems.
Is that just a gem bundle from terminal?
Just bundle, no gem.
Just bundle.
You will also see it written as bundle install. Bundle and bundle install do the same thing. They both install those gems. Cool. Okay, so I saw your server was still running in the top left. So now let's go back to the browser and try to visit that same page.
Okay.
So we could just do a refresh.
Yep, refresh and oh, I didn't switch back. It's still, that's odd.
I think you put pry in double quotes instead of single quotes.
That should be okay. So we are also, this is a scenario whenever so because we've done something that affected our environment, so like all the gems that we have installed, we need to restart the server. So so we are going to need to do Control C or Control C and then Rails S again. So this is great. This is some things that we don't like have explicit space in the mod to talk about, but these are some nuances of working with Rails. So this is really helpful. And now we're at our pry. Cool.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you. We probably have time to do one more. Did anybody have any errors that they were running into or things that we could troubleshoot together as a class? Any questions that came up? Ksenia.
Okay, that's probably a silly question, but like whenever we created a database and we are opening, Rails S, we're opening it opening it, in our local browser. So do we always have to type up the name of our directory, or does it open it automatically? Like, do you remember like my second question that I had? Like, does it open it automatically, or
does it open it automatically? Could you share your screen so we could do some experimenting here?
Sure. So for example, let's see. Like if I'm gonna exit this. And I'm just gonna close this session as well. Control C. Okay, so what if let's just say I don't even have it open, okay? So I don't have anything open. And I'm opening my Rails S. So
is
like,
server a shortcut that you have?
Yeah, that is correct. Cool. So like this is not gonna fly. Is that correct? I always have to say, well, songs.
Yeah, so when you visit, if you take off the /songs again and you get to this "Yay, you're on Rails" page, this is, we've been talking about paths and URIs. When you don't have anything here, this is what we would call the root path. So it's essentially the path is just a single slash. There's nothing after that. As we said earlier in class, the path always begins with a slash. So this is what's called the root path. By default, your root path when you're developing will just be this yay, you're on Rails page. So you don't have to do anything for this. It just like comes with the app by default. So if we wanted to have this be an actual web page, what we would do is, can you go to your code editor? And let's go to the routes file.
Let's go to the routes file.
If we wanted that to be something in our application, let's make a new line here, and let's make a get, and then in quotes, just a single slash. And then we could route that to, and then whatever controller and action we wanted. So just for experimentation, let's make this a welcome pound, and then let's just say index. So that's how you would create that route in your application.
Okay, and then I create this thing in the views and just say, and I can put whatever I want in there. Okay.
Yeah, and so this would, before we get to the view, we would also have to have a controller in here called welcome controller. And inside that welcome controller, we would need to have an index method or an index action.
Yeah. I gotcha.
And so that's where the whole, go for it.
Okay. I guess I don't want to take up too much time. I guess like, what if I have two databases on my computer that have just like this one slash, and I'm telling terminal to just go to localhost 3000. How does the computer know as to like which one I go to?
Yeah. So first of all, when you have multiple apps on your computer, so for instance, you have Task Manager and you have Setlist, each one of those has their own database. So those don't overlap at all. To answer your question of how does it know which app to go to? Well, it's whichever one's running. Can you open up a new tab here in the terminal? And can you navigate to Task Manager?
One sec. I think it's here somewhere. No.
Yep, I see it there, Task Manager.
Okay.
Do Rails S here. So it's going to try to boot up, but then at the very bottom, we'll see address already in use for 127.0.0.1 port 3000. So essentially, you can only run one application on localhost 3000 at a time. If you wanted to run two Rails apps at the same time, you would have to give it a different port by saying do Rails S and then -P and then space 3001, for example. And this tells it to run on a different port. So now this application will be on localhost 3001.
That's pretty cool. Thank you.
Cool. All right, y'all. I'm going to let you run to PD. Go into the calendar and you can find the link for that. And that is starting right now. So thank you all very much. And that's it for us today. We'll see you tomorrow.